Hello everyone. So, at the recording of this video, Wicked is coming out, and as such, I felt the need to create some sort of video about the Wicked Witch of the West. And I'll just admit it right now, I have never seen Wicked, the musical. I know next to nothing about it. I just know it's some sort of origin story for the Wicked Witch of the West, similar perhaps to Oz the Great and Powerful, but maybe not. I really don't know. But I look forward to seeing it in theaters soon. So I wanted to talk about the Wicked Witch of the West because everyone seems to be so excited about Wicked. It seems to be this big, huge deal. So let's talk about the Wicked Witch, why don't we? Specifically, I wanted to talk about actresses who have played the Wicked Witch and how they suffered injuries while performing stunts as the witch. So, a lot of people have covered the injuries suffered by Margaret Hamilton, but not many have put a spotlight on her stunt double, Betty Danko, so I wanted to talk about her today. And I also wanted to talk about Idina Menzel, who, of course, originated the role of Elphaba, as the Wicked Witch is called in Wicked. And yes, let's talk about what happened to them in bringing this iconic character to life. So before we get into our stories for today, I did want to ask you a question. Who is this? And if you have no idea, I really don't blame you. It might surprise you to know that this is the Wicked Witch of the West. This is the famous witch as she was originally conceived by author L. Frank Baum, as illustrated by W. W. Denslow. As you can see, the witch has one eye, the other eye being covered with an eye patch. And this would seem to be a handicap, but really, her eye has telescopic power, which is similar, sort of, to the crystal ball that she has in the famous MGM movie. So, speaking of that movie from 1939, the most famous adaptation of the book, as you probably know, it made some pretty drastic changes to the Wicked Witch and to Dorothy's magical shoes. So, in the book, Dorothy's shoes that she gets from the Witch of the East after her house falls on the Witch of the East, they're made of silver. They aren't ruby. So, why did they do that? The filmmakers changed the shoes from silver to ruby simply because they looked more dazzling in Technicolor set against the yellow brick road. And the ruby slippers have since become iconic, finding their way into many other adaptations of the Oz books, even though they were never present in the Oz books to begin with. The same goes for the Wicked Witch's green skin, which originates in the 1939 film. The witch's skin in the book is merely described as pale, and there's no clear reason why the witch was made green for the movie, but if I had to guess, it might be for the same reason the silver shoes were changed to ruby. The filmmakers wanted to bring vibrant colors to Oz to show off the then new Technicolor technology. In the movie, there's also an emphasis on good witches being beautiful and bad witches being ugly, something that wasn't really talked about in the book, but appears to be an idea that comes from Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which has the old crone who is ugly and evil. And Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, of course, was the movie whose success inspired MGM to go forward with adapting The Wizard of Oz, another fantasy story. So, yeah, it could be that the witch's skin was made green simply to show just how ugly she is. But whatever the reason, the green skin, like the ruby slippers, became iconic, and most, if not all, depictions of the Witch of the West that have come since Margaret Hamilton have the witch with green skin. And this leads me to the horror that took place while filming The Wizard of Oz. Because if it weren't for the witch's green skin and other changes the film makes to the book, Margaret Hamilton wouldn't have suffered third-degree burns. It happened when she was filming the witch's first scene, in which she appears in Munchkinland to investigate the death of the Witch of the East, tries to claim the ruby slippers, and threatens Dorothy. This scene wasn't in the book, because in the book, the witch doesn't appear until halfway through. To achieve Hamilton's exit from Munchkinland, a concealed elevator was installed to lower her below the stage, as fire and smoke erupted to dramatize and conceal her exit. The first take went well, but on the second take, the fireball came too soon. The flame set fire to her green copper-based makeup, causing third-degree burns to her hands and face. She spent 3 months in the hospital recovering before returning to work. Her green makeup had usually been removed with acetone due to its toxic copper content, but because of her burns, the makeup had to be removed with alcohol to prevent infection, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, was excruciatingly painful. Hamilton wasn't the only one to suffer injuries while filming the witch's scenes in The Wizard of Oz. Her stunt double, Betty Danko, was also injured in the Munchkinland scene. For the Wicked Witch's fiery entrance into Munchkinland, a catapult had been rigged up under the soundstage, and the opening through which the witch would spring out was covered by a thin aluminum cover painted the same color as the yellow brick road. While Danko waited in the pit, the choreographer was instructing the actors playing the Munchkins on how to avoid the circular piece of metal, and he ended up falling through the opening right onto Danko's shoulders. She was injured and was treated by a chiropractor at the studio's expense. But Danko suffered a far more serious injury while enacting the witch's skywriting scene, where she flies on a broomstick spelling out "Surrender Dorothy" in smoke letters. Hamilton understandably didn't want to do the scene after suffering burns while filming the Munchkinland scene, so the crew used Danko instead. They rigged up a broomstick suspended from wires with a steel saddle for Danko to sit on. Underneath the saddle was a pipe that emitted smoke when Danko pushed a button. At first, Danko's cape was pinned down to hide the pipe, but director Victor Fleming wanted the cape to blow in the wind, so the pipe was concealed under Danko's body. Danko noticed that the crew coated the pipe with asbestos. On the first 2 takes, the pipe emitted smoke perfectly, but on the third take, the pipe exploded, and Danko was blown off the broom and sustained a 2-inch deep gash around the circumference of her leg, which caused her to have a hospital stay of 11 days. Damage to her internal organs from the explosion, in addition, required a hysterectomy. Danko continued her stunt career after the incident, risking life and limb as all stunt performers do, and even getting her leg chomped on by a mountain lion on one occasion. She passed away at age 75 after a real-life incident of being hit by a car that jumped a curb. Finally, Idina Menzel, who originated the role of Elphaba, as the Wicked Witch is named in Wicked, suffered a stunt-related injury while performing in the Broadway show, one eerily similar to the injuries involving the Munchkinland trapdoor that plagued Hamilton and Danko. As recounted by Menzel in an interview with James Corden, an incident occurred on the night before what was supposed to be her final performance as Elphaba. As the show builds towards its finale, the famous melting scene is performed. Menzel would normally sink below the stage via an elevator. "Every night I'd step on it and then it would go down," explained Menzel. But one night there was a sub-automation person on. She explained that the trap door was initiated before she was on the platform. "I walked into a 5-foot open hole," she said. While Menzel caught herself before falling through, she ended up breaking her ribs in the process. She was rushed to the hospital still in full makeup and costume, while her understudy, Shoshana Bean, stepped in to finish the performance. Menzel wasn't well enough to perform her last show because of this. However, she would get a proper final show when she opened the show in the West End. The Wicked Witch of the West is played by Margaret Hamilton as one of the most iconic villains and characters in the history of cinema. She terrified countless children, and perhaps even some adults. And maybe it's because we fear her so that we seek to examine her and understand her. As Milton made Satan, a symbol of evil, a sympathetic character, Wicked makes the Wicked Witch another symbol of evil, someone we can relate to, or at least that's my understanding. Certainly the witch in all of her iterations is one of literature's and cinema's most culturally important figures, and I applaud the women who have helped bring her to life and am relieved that they survived the dangerous stunts that playing the famous witch often entails.